welcome to It's a Frankly Harry podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber. Happy New Year. Welcome to the forest, a new year in the forest. Hope you survived last night okay, that you're not too drunk or hungover with the New Year's Eve celebrations. But got a great show for you here today, special New Year's Day edition, happening to fall on a Wednesday this year. And of course, next week we'll get back to just regular old Wednesday. Actually, I think January 8th is Elvis Presley's birthday. It's kind of a special day for a lot of people. But anyway, I have a lot of thoughts, a lot of opinions on New Year's, maybe more than I had last week with Christmas, and we'll get right into those. So I've always thought there was some special quirks or even nuances, you could say, about New Year's. I always thought it was interesting or intriguing how we go from Christmas, which is, of course, a festive holiday, lots of celebration, but more of a family holiday, to New Year's, which is basically back to party hard, lots of drinking, lots of who knows what else, maybe a lot of sinning type holiday. Usually over the years, I usually wound up celebrating it with my family, usually by shooting fireworks, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the program. But two totally different days that are only a week apart, and obviously totally different meanings, but just totally different approaches to them is the point that I was trying to get at there. And then another thing that I've noticed over the years with New Year's, we are so anxious on New Year's Eve and day to get the previous year out from under us, out from behind us. We're tired of it. We want to move on to this next new year, which we have a lot of high hopes for, of course. I think everybody should, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But it's only another 365 days when we'll be wanting to get rid of this formerly new year. We'll be tired of it and be ready to move on again. So, and of course, once you get a little older like me at my age, 365 days sure is not a hell of a lot of time. And then the third thing that I picked out here that I also thought was kind of odd to me. I mean, especially as I've gotten older. I didn't really think about this much when I was a kid, but New Year's Eve is the last day of the tax year, and so all these charities are wanting you to donate to them on this last day of the year, which is fine. You know, you can donate whenever you want to or whoever you want to. But they always wait till the last day many of them to run their commercials and give a tax-deductible gift. We've been giving a lot lately because we just had Christmas, and a month before that we had Thanksgiving. And then somebody else wants a donation. And it could be important for your taxes, your tax return coming up in a few months, of course. But I have always found it weird that we, end the tax year with the actual year. I know it makes sense, I guess, that may be one of the only things that makes sense in the tax code, but usually on New Year's Eve, I'm more focused on watching football bowl games, college football bowl games, and maybe eating black-eyed peas and shooting fireworks. So usually donating money isn't the first thing on my mind. But anyway, those are three things that have always puzzled or perturbed me, that's a fancy word there, about New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. The next little thing that I wanted to get into on this New Year's Day show, and this is the most appropriate day or week of the year to discuss this, and this is kind of deep for some of you. Some of you probably have never thought about this. In fact, I didn't think about this until the last year or two. It has to do, and historians may have an answer to this, but I'm not sure they even talk about this very much. So it's right up my alley to discuss something that doesn't get talked about much, or if it's not talked about much, then it's obviously not examined or analyzed very much either. But I've always been curious about the way we number our years. Now, obviously, we're in a time called Anno Domini, which is the new year. We just left 2024 AD, 2024, the year of our Lord, and now we're in 2025 Anno Domini, or 2025, the year of our Lord. Now, that was based on a premise. A lot of people think if Jesus was born in the year 0, which there was no year 0, by the way, that it has now been 2025 years since then, was basically the way that would be measured. He was actually born in 6 BC or 5 BC. People debate that just a little bit, actually. But what I'm getting at here is what exactly was BC. Because BC, of course, means before Christ. And that's a way that we number the years before, that were supposedly before his birth. But if you were actually in the time of BC, that can't be the way that they numbered them, because, so let's say I'm recording this right now in 2024. Let's just say it's 2024 BC, and New Year's is approaching. That means the next year would be 2023 BC, and then the next year would be 2022 BC. They did not count down the years back then because they didn't know when Christ was going to come. So they could not have used the BC system. So I'm confused as to what they actually used instead. And people will also tell you BC, of course, means before Christ. Some of these politically correct chuckleheads have changed it to before Common Era, but it's still based on the birth of Christ. And apparently 1 BC went into there was no year 0, so 1 BC went into year 1 AD. I think that's about all the factoids that I can list for BC, but I don't understand or don't even know how they labeled their years back then, because it was obviously a different system, because they did not count down. Why would anybody count down to the years of something that they didn't know when it was going to happen at the time? So this kind of ties in, by the way, with my Old Testament discussion from last week. This may be difficult for the modern mind to understand, but I'm not sure how they did their years back in the days of Moses or King David or Isaiah the prophet or anybody in the Old Testament. It's just something that I've always wondered about. A numbering system. They obviously had an old numbering system, but I don't know what it was. And I don't know if it varied based on country or nation or how the hell they did it back then. But these are obviously something to think about here on this New Year's Day. So for those of us living in 2025, the year of our Lord, that may be a little bit much for the modern mind to digest. It's something totally foreign to us, really, to consider the BC thing. But if you happen to be a little hungover or drunk from your partying last night, you may want to wait a little while to consider that pondering I just gave you. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk to you about is New Year's resolutions. I sincerely hope and pray, of course, that your 2025 is happy and healthy, prosperous, you name it. I'm pulling for you here. And hopefully you made a lot of resolutions. I don't know if people really write them down or anything anymore. I think the biggest problem with realizing resolutions has to do with, you can list a lot of different things and a lot of things you like to see, a lot of wishes, things you want in the new year, all that sort of stuff. But I think where they really fail is to not have an adequate plan for them, and maybe not even to have a proper commitment, perhaps along with a passion or an obsession. I was just looking at Twitter the other day, and there's a guy on there, I'm not going to say his name, an online writer, a very successful one. I like him a lot. He's one of the experts out there that I think you can't go wrong with. But occasionally he will say some things that I disagree with, and sometimes the expert or guru advice is not always right for everybody. But he basically said in a one-line blurb on Twitter that if you make resolutions, you're a loser, which I think is totally wrong and off base. I think you just have to plan for them, and I believe that you can achieve them with the right amount of passion and obsession as well. The one that I have most for this year, for my life, I really think this is kind of the secret to life, if you will. It kind of reminds me of that movie City Slickers, where Jack Palance said, like, the secret to life is like one thing or something. I haven't seen it in a long time, but the secret to life for me is to think and act outside the box as much as possible. I think if you can do that, you're going to find a lot of blessings in life. I think it's going to open up a lot of doors, maybe even windows if you want to crawl in that way. But that's the one resolution of mine that I would share with you this year. Obviously I have a lot of plans in the creative field. Don't know if I'll go back to work in dentistry or not. I'm trying to maybe go back to school and do some, maybe get into the financial field as a change of career, assuming creative work doesn't work out. Of course, I'm dropping the written article writing for now, but this podcast, of course, is going to continue every Wednesday, and your presence here, and hopefully your community involvement and personalized messaging and things like that are the real reasons that I do this. And I would love to hear from you in regard to anything, whether it's suggestions or comments on all the crazy things I say. When it comes to this podcast, it's a Frankly Harry podcast. I truly feel like there's no way but up for it, and planning on doing some big things here, whether it's guests or video, maybe even move to a new platform. I guess you could say that's kind of a sub-resolution for this year, if you will. But can't wait to see what happens, and I know you'll be along for the ride. Okay, so the last thing that we'll do on this New Year's show is I'll share some New Year's Day, or just actually New Year's in general memories. Could be eve, could be day. That's another interesting thing. We only have the eves at Christmas and New Year's. I don't think, we don't typically call them eves other holidays previously before that. Like Thanksgiving Eve, there's no Thanksgiving Eve, there's no July 4th Eve, you just call it July 3rd. We just have the eves on December 24th and December 31st. I wonder how that came about. Well, anyway, most of my New Year's memories, they usually involve watching college football on New Year's Day. Well, and also New Year's Eve. That was a big football day as well. What they've done in recent years with the BCS and the college football playoff, I think they've really taken a lot of those games off their traditional days, and they've kind of watered the day down. In fact, I know a lot of you youngins out there may not recall that you used to have 3 or 4 TV sets in order to watch all the games at one time on New Year's Day because there were so many of them. And I think I checked the schedule this year. It's all college football playoff games, but there's only 3 games the entire day today, January 1st. So I don't know why they've gotten so watered down. I know they want all the games to be kind of exclusive. But I know New Year's Eve is also, of course, a big football day. Outside of football, the big thing that my dad got me into and still remains a tradition is to eat black-eyed peas for good luck. I don't think it's just a South thing. I think that's pretty much everywhere, at least in America and the United States. I don't know about other places in the world, but that's supposed to bring good luck. And I know in Texas we can put jalapenos in them or spice them up with something. They're damn good eating. I guess you can put some bacon in them too. Actually getting kind of hungry thinking about them. New Year's Eve, I occasionally would do a little bit of partying here and there, but not much at all. Most of the time it was spent with family on the farm shooting fireworks. A lot of childhood memories there. It's kind of nice at New Year's because, like, it gets dark at 6 o'clock, which, of course, now if you compare it to 4th of July, you know, you can't shoot off your fireworks until 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. Now, at New Year's, you can start them at 6 if you want to, but then Dad would say, well, you can't really set them off until midnight, until it becomes midnight on New Year's Day, because then what are you celebrating? You're celebrating the old year that we're all trying to get rid of, right? I know there was one time I had excuse me, I had a black cat go off in my hand, and I'm trying to remember if it was my thumb or my pinky that stung like hell. I know that happened one time, because you would hold them in your hand and you light them, and then you just throw them somewhere, which is kind of what you're supposed to do, but this fuse went off fast and blew up in my hand, and thankfully I didn't lose any digits. I may have deserved to lose some, hell, I don't know, but we always had a good time shooting fireworks. Grandma, my dad's mom would always say, like, little boys that play with fire little boys that play with fire pee in their pants. And apparently my wife has heard that saying before too. And, going to the fireworks stand with Dad in particular, it doesn't take a lot to really mount up a bill there on spending a lot of money on fireworks. And I guess they were actually better during his day. During my lifetime, they were largely made in China, and they were good for like one pop. And I actually had one, I think it wasn't New Year's, it might have been 4th of July, where we were up at the lake and shot a rocket off, and I set it down, lit it, and then I guess I must have knocked it over or something while I was moving away from it, and it was pointed out toward the lake, and the thing actually went down to the lake under the water, came back up and blew a fireworks. It was really like you would expect, the skyrocket exploding. It actually did that after its little sojourn in the water. But a lot of fun memories there. Don't really have too much else to say. I guess a lot of times we're still playing with our Christmas presents most New Year's. Most of the time it was just restful and relaxing. It's the climax, essentially, at the end of the holiday season. But with that, I think I'll wrap it up here. One more time, wishing you and your family a happy New Year, and can't wait to see what we all accomplish in this new 2025. Like always, share this podcast, hit subscribe, tell all your family and friends and everybody you run into about It's a Frankly Harry podcast, and Look forward to seeing you again next week and throughout this brand new year. Love you. God bless you. And see you then. Bye.